Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I'm back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation I received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's no filter Q&A with question number one. Nick, I was asking my trainer about the type of foods I should be eating to lose more weight. He told me to talk to a nutritionist as his job is to just train me. Do you talk with your clients about their diets or do you refer them to someone else for this type of service? All right, good question. Okay, so there's a lot of trainers that feel when it comes to dietary nutrition that whole concept of what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat is out of their scope of practice. Now, this can be true for a lot of trainers. The thing is, though, if you're a good personal trainer, someone who is well educated, someone who's well rounded, someone who has studied nutrition, you should be able to give your clients some good advice as to what they should be eating pre-workout, what they should be eating post-workout, what they should be eating when they're not even working out. You should be able to explain the difference between simple carbs and complex carbs, healthy fats versus trans fats, right? You should be able to tell people how many calories that they should be aiming for when they're trying to put on muscle, how many calories they should be trying to take out if they're trying to lose body fat. So you should have a good understanding of not just macronutrients, but the micronutrients as well. If you don't have an understanding of this and you feel like it's a completely foreign topic to you, then you yourself are not a well-rounded trainer. Okay. You're in the fitness industry. So I've talked about the importance of understanding that dietary nutrition and training itself go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. Okay. So obviously, if you're working someone who has health issues, maybe it's something like Crohn's, colitis, type 2 diabetic, or has severe allergies, yeah, you can say, this is out of my scope of practice. You might have better help working with someone like a dietitian, a registered dietitian, or a registered nutritionist. But if you're working with the average sedentary individual who really doesn't have any health issues, I mean, their biggest health issues might be high blood pressure. They might have some obesity issues because they're not working out. But for the most part, if they don't really have any health issues related to nutrition, you can give them advice. And not only can you give them advice, you should be giving them advice. Because if your client's coming to see you 3 or 4 times a week and they're not progressing, and you're not even talking to them about their diet, there's a big reason why they're not progressing. And it's probably because you're not talking to them about their diet. You have to remember the average person doesn't really know much about dietary nutrition. And why would they? Given all the misinformation that we're given through the media, especially social media, oh my God, that's the worst. What they teach kids in school, a lot of people don't have a grasp of what they should be eating. There's people that still think Chipotle's is healthy, right? Like it's unbelievable. So it's your job as a trainer to educate your clients. Now, I work with a lot of people. I work with people in the gym. I work with people online. There's people that I design customized nutritional plans for. There's people that I don't design their nutritional plans for. I just train them, whether that be designing a training program for them online or working with them in the gym in person. With those types of people, the ones who I'm not working on a nutritional plan, I still get in their business though about their diet. I want to know what they're eating pre-workout. I want to know what they're eating post-workout. I want to know what they're eating on the days that they're not working out. I get right in their business. I get very nosy. The reason I get nosy is because I want my clients to progress. I want them to succeed. I want them to achieve their goals. If I'm not paying attention to their diet, how are they going to achieve their goals? Right? So it's so important. And at the end of the day, this is your job. This is your profession. If your clients are not achieving results, whether it be physical or just internally where they feel better, they're not going to return to you, right? And even forget about it from a business side of point. Someone's paying you for a service. They're coming to you because you're an expert in your field. So be an expert. If you feel shy or you're not too sure about dietary nutrition, take a few courses. I did. Those courses helped me a lot. They allowed me to have a better understanding of how healthy fats work, how complex carbohydrates assist when it comes to building up glycogen storages, the importance of protein, but again, not consuming an abundance amount of protein in order to build muscle, right? Because there's a lot of myths out there. There's a lot of misconceptions out there. There's a lot of bro science out there. So I think it's a mistake for a trainer to not talk to his or her client about dietary nutrition and be nosy, get in their face about it, ask them questions. They don't have to take your advice, but make sure that they understand that if they do take your advice, they're going to achieve better results. Okay. So if you feel like it's out of your scope of practice, just take a few basic dietary nutritional courses, just so you can at least give them some basic information about, hey, pre-workout, you might want to have some oats and some protein powder. Post-workout, you might want to have some healthy fats, peanut butter, complex carbohydrate, brown rice, a lean protein, chicken breasts, right? So you want to make sure that you're helping your clients become their best. And in order to do that, they have to be able to get in the gym and train with weights, but also need to be able to get in that kitchen and fuel their body properly so that they're getting the results that they expect and that they want to achieve. Okay. If you give them the right advice on diet and they're not taking it, that's on them. I could tell someone, hey, I want you to have chicken and rice for dinner. And if they decide to order KFC, well, that's on them. I can't force them to have chicken and rice, but at least I'm doing my part to educate them about what they should be eating throughout the day in order to get them from point A to point B. Okay. So to answer that question, I do understand that there's a lot of trainers out there that don't feel comfortable offering dietary nutritional advice, but I think that's a mistake. I think that you should be able to at least give general advice to your clients in order to help them become more successful on achieving their health and fitness goals. All right. Nick, how often should I train each muscle group per week for maximum growth? My recommendation is once per week, once a week with high volume. So if you're training, for example, your chest on a Monday, my recommendation is keep your sets anywhere from 20 to 28 sets for that muscle group. And I know that might sound like a lot of volume, but remember, you're only doing that once a week. So you're not going to train your chest until Monday. So you get a full 6 days to recover, and then you go back and you train your chest again. Same thing with the back, same thing with the arms, same thing with the legs, shoulders, abs, whatever. Okay. We know now, and this is from years and years of trial and error and studies on exercise science, that the muscle needs time to recover. So when you go into the gym, you're tearing that muscle down. In order to recover, you need to rest it. Okay. So you remember, like, if you're training your chest on a Monday and you train your shoulders on, let's say, a Wednesday, when you're training your chest, you're still using your shoulders. You can't turn your shoulders off. You're still using your anterior deltoids when you press. They're not the primary muscle group in a bench press, for example, but they're a synergist muscle group. They're assisting in the push, just like you're using your triceps. So those synergist muscles are being worked on a chest day. And then when you go work them on a shoulder day, they might be a little fatigued from that chest workout. That's okay, though, because you're not working them directly. You're working them indirectly on that workout. Okay. So it's not necessarily about how often, the more often you train a muscle group is going to grow. That's not true at all. If anything, if you train a muscle group too much, it's going to have the opposite effect. It's not going to grow at all. You're going to overtrain it. Okay, so muscle grows outside the gym, not inside the gym. So my recommendation is keep it simple. Train each muscle group once a week. If you're following like a bodybuilding split training program, it could be chest on Monday, back on Tuesday, shoulders on Wednesday, arms on Thursday, legs on Friday. Throw abs in there on one of those days and take the weekends off, and then repeat. So you keep it simple. And that's honestly my recommendation, because what I've noticed, especially working with natural lifters, as in people who are not using anabolic steroids, they recover best and they receive better results, or I should say they achieve better results when they rest that muscle for a full 6 days. Okay. And I can tell you that from experience of working with people and with the numerous studies they've done on bodybuilding splits and exercise science, that this works best if your goal is to build solid, lean, dense muscle. Once a week, each muscle group. All right, next question. Nick, how can I increase my bench press for better chest development? Yeah, stop doing bench press. So if you've hit a plateau on a certain exercise, my recommendation is to stop doing that exercise for a few weeks. Change up the bench press for a dumbbell press, right? So if you've been doing flat barbell bench press, change that up for a flat dumbbell press for a good 6 weeks. Then go back to the barbell press. What happens is when you're stuck on a plateau and you're doing a certain exercise over and over and over again, the chances of you increasing your weight are very unlikely, especially if you've been on that plateau for a good 4 to 6 weeks or even months, right? So I recommend taking that exercise out completely, doing a different exercise with a different piece of equipment. So like I said, it could be a dumbbell press, it could be like a hammer strength machine press if you got a commercial gym. So you're just taking that muscle group through a different range of motion and a different plane of motion. Okay. And then you go back. Because sometimes when you're doing the same exercises over and over again, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out, you build up some scar tissue in that area. And what happens is it becomes very tight. It's almost like an impingement. I've had that happen before doing certain exercises. So I'll take a few weeks off from that exercise. I'll still work that muscle group. So I won't stop training my chest, but I'll just change up the exercise. Instead of doing barbell work for my chest, I'll just do dumbbell work for my chest. I'll do some cable work for my chest. And there's no specific timeline, but I usually recommend 4 to 6 weeks. Go back and try it again. What you'll notice is that you actually will be stronger. Okay. So that's usually the culprit, is that it's usually just built up scar tissue that's not allowing you to push through those extra reps. But by taking that break from that specific exercise and doing another exercise that still targets, in that case, that would be pec major, you're going to get the benefits and you're going to notice that your strength increases when you go back. Okay. I promise you, it's not going to decrease. I've never had that decrease of anyone I've worked with. It's a really good way to add on more weight to the exercise that you're trying to do. Okay. So try that. I know it might seem counterproductive, but I promise you it works. I've used it for years on both myself and clients, and it always works. It has a 100% success rate. So if you hit a plateau on a certain exercise, take it out for a few weeks, supplement it with another exercise that's working the same muscle group, and then go back to it and see how much your strength goes up. Now, it's not going to go up dramatically, but you're going to notice at least a good 5% increase in your strength for sure. All right. Next question. Nick, I've heard you talk about muscular imbalances and was wondering how to prevent this from happening while training. Another good question. So every muscle group you train, in my opinion, should have at least one isolateral movement in there. Now, what's an isolateral movement? Well, an isolateral movement is an exercise where you're working just one side of the body. Now, that doesn't mean that you would only work one side of the body at a time. Like, it could mean that, like, if say you're doing one-arm dumbbell rows. So if I'm doing one-arm dumbbell rows, I'm doing one arm for 12 to 15 reps, and then I rotate to the other arm 12 to 15 reps. And that's one way you could do an isolateral movement. Another way you could do an isolateral movement, though, would be doing, say, dumbbell flies, or those dumbbell presses I was just talking about in the last question. If you have a dumbbell in each hand, it's not connected as a whole. Each arm could move independently. So you have to push at the same time. One arm's not helping the other arm, right? Whereas if you're doing, let's say, a bench press, that's what we call compound movement. And let's say you're stronger on your right side than your left side. As you fatigue, chances are you're going to be pushing more if you're right. You don't mean to, but your body goes into survival. So that would be considered compound exercise, which is a great exercise, but you also want to make sure that you're complementing that exercise with a nice lateral movement. So a dumbbell bench press would be perfect, a dumbbell fly, something where each side works independently. Okay, that's a great way to stop any muscular imbalances. But if you're noticing, let's say, a severe muscular imbalance, like let's say you notice your right arm is much stronger than your left arm when you're doing curls, then my recommendation would be to do an isometric exercise, which is working one side of the body at a time, similar to what I mentioned about the one-arm dumbbell row. But that could be, let's say, if it's a case of a bicep, a cable bicep curl, where you're just focusing on that left side for 12 to 15 reps, and then you switch over and you do your right side for 12 to 15 reps, because then your whole mind to muscle connection will be in that one side as it's doing that exercise. I only recommend that, though, for severe muscular imbalances. If you just want to prevent muscular imbalances from happening, my recommendation, make sure you're doing a lot of isolateral movements. So most dumbbell exercises are going to be isolateral movements, whether you're doing dumbbell lateral raises, right, bent over dumbbell rows, dumbbell shoulder press, where you have to control each side evenly. Because if your right side is stronger than your left, let's say on a dumbbell shoulder press, well, your right side is not going to be able to help your left if you're doing a press, right? The left has to work just as much as the right. So that's the benefit of doing free weights. And that's why I'm a huge advocate of using free weights as opposed to machines, because machines kind of dictate the movement for you. They also dictate the plane of motion and the range of motion. So I'm not telling you to stay away from machines completely, but if you want to prevent muscular imbalances, you want to make sure you're doing a lot of isolateral and isometric work in your workouts, especially isolateral. And if there's severe muscular imbalances, then you want to throw in the isometric work. All right. Okay. Nick, should I be in a calorie surplus to build muscle, or can I gain muscle in a maintenance phase? Yeah. So another good question. Here's the thing. if you go too far into a caloric surplus, if you're trying to build muscle, you're going to put on weight. But the majority of weight you're going to put on is sloppy weight. It will be. Okay. I've done this myself over the years. I've had people buy mass gainers and all this stuff. And the problem is if you're not burning as many calories as you're taking in, you're going to put on body fat. Okay. And there's a huge misconception here. And I blame the supplement industry. I blame bro science for telling people that in order to put on muscle, you need to be in a severe caloric surplus. This is not true. Okay. There's no truth to this. If you want to put on muscle and not put on fat and not just put on water, you need to make sure that you're eating lots of complex carbohydrates, lots of healthy fats, lots of lean protein. Okay. But you don't have to be consuming ridiculous amounts. Because when I say lots, do you know how much chicken breast you would need to consume to get in, let's say, 300 grams of protein? It's crazy the amount when you consider 8 ounces of chicken is like 35 grams of protein. So just think about that for a second. How much chicken you'd have to really consume just to get to 300. It's so when you're eating healthy food, it's very hard to get your calories high. If you're eating sloppy food like McDonald's, KFC, that type of food, it's very easy to get those calories high, right? But even for myself, my average meal is probably about 250, 300 calories max. It's not many calories. And at this point now, for me, I'm no longer trying to put on muscle. I'm just trying to maintain the muscle I have. Actually, I'm trying to lose a little bit of muscle now. So I don't need to create a huge caloric surplus. At the same time, if I wanted to add on a little bit more muscle, I would increase my protein, but I'd leave my carbs and fats the same. You've got to find that healthy medium for you, okay? And it's unfortunately it's not a one size fits all answer because everyone's different. Some people have faster metabolisms than others, right? So if you're someone who does have a faster metabolism, chances are yes, you're going to have to consume more calories than someone who has a slower metabolism. But at the same time, as long as those calories are clean and are coming from, like I said, complex carbs, healthy fats, lean protein sources, you're going to put on muscle. Okay. You just want to make sure that any weight you add on the scale is quality weight. And I've always talked about this. Anyone can lose weight and anyone can gain weight. It's not difficult to do. To gain muscle and to lose fat is very different. Okay. And you have to have a whole different strategy to do this. Okay. So don't get caught up into these mass gainers or just eat anything you can to get big, like pizza, and you go crazy and have like, burgers and fries and chips and ice cream because you're just trying to get big and all this bulky nonsense. All that's going to happen is you're going to put on fat, you're going to put on water. You might put on a little bit of muscle because you're probably going to be stronger in the gym due to the excess amount of calories, but it's not going to feel good. You're not going to feel good. It's going to be unhealthy. You're going to feel lethargic. You're going to have problems sleeping. You're going to have trouble breathing. So I would not recommend that. Okay. Monitor your body accordingly. Take progress photos for yourself and see how your body is adapting to the program that you're on. And that's what I do with people's nutritional plans all the time. I look at their bodies. Oh, you're not really changing. So we're going to increase your protein. Or you know what? You're adding on weight, but I think you're adding on some body fat. So we're going to cut back on your carbs or cut back on your fats, right? So that's why I always talk about macronutrient rotation, especially if the goal is to build muscle or lose body fat, because then your body doesn't become stagnant, right? So that's the whole thing about macronutrient rotation and why when people work with me on their nutritional plans, I make weekly revisions to their plan in order for them to continuously progress as opposed to just plateauing. Okay. So if you're putting together a good nutritional plan, you should be making revisions on a weekly or at least bi-weekly basis as your body changes throughout the plan or doesn't change throughout the plan. Okay. Okay, Nick, can I build muscle on a vegetarian or vegan diet? I've decided to give up meat completely in 2025, but I'm worried I'm going to lose muscle from doing this. No, you absolutely can gain muscle on either vegan or vegetarian diet. The only issue you have to watch when you're following these diets, I've talked about this before, is that usually people who follow vegan or vegetarian diets, your protein sources contain carbohydrates, right? So if you're talking about beans and lentils, for example, they're great protein sources, but they also contain carbohydrates. Whereas if someone were to have a chicken breast or a piece of cod or tilapia or salmon, there's no carbs in that, right? So a meat eater has an easier time keeping their carbs low, where a vegetarian or vegan has a more challenging time keeping their carbs low. But there are still protein sources that you as a vegan or vegetarian could consume, one being a vegan protein powder, or if you're a vegetarian, egg whites, right? Both of those contain no carbohydrate sources whatsoever. So you can still be done. But if you're going to go down the route of being full vegetarian or full vegan, and let's say you're going to go for the beans and lentils, then my recommendation is to just cut back on the rice, on the yams, on the sweet potatoes, oatmeal, and so on, because you don't want to be in a caloric surplus on carbohydrates, because then you will get fat. Okay. As far as losing muscle, though, no, you shouldn't lose muscle. You don't need to eat meat to build muscle. I've always said it's just easier, because how easy is it to cook up a chicken breast and eat that? And it's just pure protein, very little fat, right? How easy is it just to grill up a piece of salmon and it's a good healthy fat? So you get your fats and your protein and you don't have to worry about crazy carbs. It's easy. So it's definitely easier to diet as a meat eater versus a vegan or vegetarian, but just because it's easier doesn't mean it's better, right? I think I'm working with right now 6 vegetarians on my roster, and they're putting on muscle. They have no problem losing fat, but we make a strategic plan. So if I'm giving them protein sources that contain carbohydrates, I'm not giving them a cup of rice. I might be giving them a third of a cup of rice, or I might not be giving them rice at all, right? I'm using rice as an example as a complex carbohydrate source. So it's just being strategic with the plan that you put in. But absolutely, you can put on muscle as a vegan or a vegetarian. So don't fall into that nonsense that you have to eat meat to build muscle. It's just easier and it's a more convenient way to add on muscle. And honestly, I eat meat, but these days I don't eat that much meat. I eat meat like once, maybe twice a day. Most of my food now comes from plant-based sources. So when I competed, I used to eat a lot of meat, but again, it was more of a convenience factor for me than anything else. So it can be done. Just watch your carbs, because you got to be careful. You don't want to be putting on body fat. That's the only thing I'll tell you. But you definitely can get in your protein. Just watch those carbohydrate sources, and it should work out for you well. Okay, a few more questions. Nick, how can I increase my muscle mass while losing fat? Okay, so what you're talking about is body recomposition. Okay, so you're trying to change the composition of your body. You're not necessarily too concerned about the number on the scale. You're more trying to trade the fat for muscle. And I've talked about this time and time again, that despite what all these fitness enthusiasts and experts say, this can be done. Okay, again, you just have to implement a strategic strategy into your plan, your nutritional plan, and your training program. Okay. So, how do you do that? Well, again, it comes down to making sure that you're consuming complex carbohydrates, healthy fats, lean proteins. How much of each? That's going to depend on multiple factors. Where you're starting from, what's your current fitness level? What does your current training program look like? What's your lifestyle? Do you have an active job, or do you have a sedentary job where you sit all day, right? So these are all these factors that you have to take into consideration when putting together a good nutritional plan that's going to correlate with your training program, okay? But the whole thing is, when you're trying to trade fat for muscle, you have to make sure that everything's in sync. And what I mean by that is your supplement protocol has got to be in sync with your nutritional plan. Your nutritional plan has to be in sync with your training program. Your training program has to be in sync with your sleeping patterns. So everything has to line up. And that's how it's going to get done. And I know that seems like, oh my God, that's a lot of work, but you're trying to recomposition your body, I should say, right? So you're trying to really not just lose weight. Now you're trying to lose fat. You're trying to build muscle. And I just talked about this earlier. You have to be strategic in order to do this. You have to have a game plan, but it can be done. Okay. So it's not eat this and train like this and you'll do that. No, it's eat this, and train this way for this many weeks, months, years, and you'll get from, again, point A to point B. But you have to really make sure that your diet's dialed in, and you have to make sure that you're training with the utmost amount of intensity, because now you're trying to do something that's a lot more challenging than just, oh, I want to lose weight or I want to gain weight. No, I want to lose fat and I want to build muscle. So in order for me to do this in the most efficient manner possibly, I have to make sure that my training, my diet, my supplementation, and my sleep are all perfect. There's no room for error. There can't be room for error when you're trying to do this. I'm telling you. Okay. But it can be done. Okay. If you're not sure, or you're feeling uneasy about, okay, well, what should I do with my diet and how should this correlate with my training? I don't even know what supplements I should be taking and how much sleep do I really need? My recommendation to you would be to work with a coach, because it'll take that burden of stress off you. Put your trust in a reputable, knowledgeable, experienced coach, and you don't even have to think about that. All you have to do, which is really a lot of work still, but you are the one that has to just follow the plan. The plan's laid out for you. So that takes a lot of the stress out because now you have a coach that's actually putting together that supplement protocol, that training program for you, that nutritional plan for you, and telling you, hey, you're going to have to sleep at least 7 to 9 hours a night and putting you on that plan. And you just have to follow the plan, which I said, it's no easy feat. It's still work that you have to put in, but at least you don't have to worry or stress about, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? You're now working with an expert that can help guide you throughout this process. All right. Okay, two more questions. Nick, can women build muscle as effectively as men? My girlfriend is worried she's going to get super muscular if she starts lifting weights, but I've heard you say this only happens with women that take steroids and not women who stay natural. Thanks, Nick. Okay, so how do we build muscle? We lift weights, of course, but why do men put on more muscle than women? Well, this comes down to the testosterone factor. Men have more testosterone than women. Now, women still have testosterone, of course, but not to the degree that men have. And this is why men are able to build larger, denser, and I'm not going to say leaner, but more defined muscle bellies than women. That's normal. Okay. Now, when you see women who are taking anabolic steroids, like female bodybuilders, well, now they're increasing their testosterone, decreasing their estrogen levels, and therefore they're going to put on more muscle. So when the average woman who doesn't really know anything about anabolic steroids sees women like this, their major concern is, oh my God, I don't want to go to the gym and lift weights because I'm going to look like them. And that's a huge misconception because as long as you're not taking anabolic steroids, you're not going to look like them. Unless you're a genetic freak, which I got to tell you, all my years of working out, I think I've met maybe one or two women who are genetic freaks who just put on muscle, a huge amount of muscle naturally. But in what 25 years of doing this, I've only met one or two women like that. So it's rare. Okay. So unless you're a genetic freak, you don't have to worry about looking like a female bodybuilder. Okay. It's not going to happen. Women can still put on solid, lean, dense muscle. Of course, they're not going to look like men. It's not going to happen because, again, you have higher estrogen levels, you have lower testosterone levels. So, therefore, if you follow the same training program as your husband or your boyfriend or just your male friend, you're not going to look like that person. It's not going to happen. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. This is why I always say men and women can train the exact same. I train men and women the exact same. Are they lifting the same amount of weight? No. Well, some women I train actually lift more weight than the guys, but overall, they're not doing the same weight. No, it does, but the weight is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. I always tell people your body will adapt to certain programs. And in order to make it change, we have to challenge it. But if your body's being challenged with lifting 5 pounds, you're gonna see results. So it's a mistake for women not to be lifting weights because they think they're going to look bulky or they think that they're going to look like a female bodybuilder. That is not going to happen. Okay. I've never had that happen with any of the women I've worked with at all. I don't train women that use steroids. I'm actually against women using steroids. I think that can have very adverse long-term side effects, very negative side effects. I'm not necessarily against men using steroids, but again, the side effects are not as detrimental on men as they can be on women. And that's why I don't recommend that women use steroids. With that being said, if you're a woman who is concerned about, looking freaky or looking like a female bodybuilder or any of these things, I can assure you this will not happen. Okay. And I promise you. I know sometimes hearing that from someone like me, who's this big meathead, and you're like, well, what do you know? You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, don't take what I'm saying. But if you talk to any women I work with, or if you just talk to most women who just work out on their own on a regular basis, they'll tell you it's not going to happen. Okay. So that's a huge misconception. So you're not going to get bulky. You're not going to get overly developed. And this will only happen if you are someone who is using anabolic steroids. Then, yeah, because you're going to decrease your estrogen levels and you're going to elevate your testosterone levels. And then you're asking for long-term negative side effects: facial hair, deep voice, enlarged clitoris. There's numerous ramifications that can happen from this. So this is why I advise women not to take steroids. All right. One more question. Nick, how come you don't post before and after photos of your clients on your website? I think this would be a good way to market your business. Yeah, so this is more of a me thing. Okay, so how I treat my clients, whether it's online or in person, is exactly how I would want to be treated if I was paying for this type of service. And what I mean by this type of service, coaching services, whether it's online coaching or in-house personal training services. I don't want someone using me as a marketing tool. I wouldn't mind if I'm getting great results with that trainer, throwing them a testimonial. I wouldn't mind throwing them a Google review. And I've had clients do that for me, and I'm very appreciative of all my clients who've written me great Google reviews and have added testimonials to our website. But when it comes to before and after photos, if I'm coming to work with a trainer and I feel self-conscious about my body, I don't like the way I look. And that trainer says, well, I need to take a photo of you. And I do this with clients who work with me online. I need to see a photo of how you're looking. I need to see how we're starting. But if that trainer uses that photo of me 6 months down the line when I've progressed and says, look at what I did with this person when they looked at their worst and look what they look at their best. Even now that I'm looking at my best, I wouldn't feel comfortable with the whole world seeing how I looked at my worst. And some of those progress photos, I mean, they're embarrassing for a lot of people. I mean, you see women wearing bra tops and you see, they have maybe a gut carrying over their shorts. You see guys, same thing. They have, man boobs. And yeah, maybe 6 months later, they look great, but that other photo is still up there. And so for me, I wouldn't feel good about that. So I've never done that to anyone. Now, I've had clients post photos of themselves from where they started to where they are now, and they've tagged me, and I'll share that, but I'm not posting it. And I just don't believe in that because it's something that I wouldn't feel comfortable with. So therefore, I don't ask my clients to do that. I would feel, like I said, I'd feel totally comfortable giving a testimonial or Google review. And I've had numerous people do that. Okay. So if I'm comfortable doing it, I'll ask a client to do it. It's the same thing with a workout. I would never give a client an exercise that I myself wouldn't feel comfortable doing. I don't feel comfortable doing deadlifts. I don't give a single one of my clients deadlifts, not a single one of them. If they really want to do deadlifts, which I don't think really ever happens, I'll give them to them. I know how to teach someone how to do a deadlift. However, as I mentioned in the past, I feel that the risks outweigh the benefits when it comes to doing deadlifts. So because of that, and because of my experience in the gym and training people for 22 plus years and witnessing numerous people get injured from doing deadlifts, I don't prescribe deadlifts into my workout routines to clients. I don't. I don't do deadlifts. Okay. So every exercise, every training program, every single workout that I give a client, I myself have done. Okay. So it's the same way with my services. I don't ask clients to do things that I wouldn't feel comfortable for. It's the same reason I don't record my clients in the gym and then post them up on Instagram. I don't do that. Again, I've had clients ask me to record them in a video and then they've tagged me in that video. No problem. I'll share it. But I don't use that for my marketing services. I'm fortunate enough that I don't really need to use that for my marketing services. I have a full roster. But even if I didn't have a full roster, I wouldn't be using that as my marketing services because for the simple reason that I wouldn't feel comfortable with someone asking me to do that. I wouldn't feel comfortable with someone filming me do an exercise that I'm not really too sure if I'm doing it correctly or incorrectly. And that person should be adjusting my form and correcting my technique rather than recording me on a phone to put me up on Instagram to market his or her services. To me, I think it's kind of tacky. I think it's sleazy, and it's just something I've never done. Now, people can judge me and say, well, you'd get way more business if you did it. I'm like, maybe, but I think I attract a lot of the people that are happy that I don't do that and that don't want to be used as a marketing tool on my website with their photos of how they looked at their worst and now that they look great. Okay. So that's why I don't do it. And, there's people out there, like I said, that might disagree with that, and that's fine. But I've always treated my clients the way that I want to be treated. And it comes to the same way with the way I charge people. If I feel like, I know some trainers charge like say 200 an hour. A lot of people can't afford that. So I'm like, what would I feel comfortable paying someone who's been doing a job for 20 plus years and who has a solid reputation, has numerous Google reviews, numerous testimonials, obviously knows what they're doing, practices what they preach on a daily basis, looks the part, acts the part. What do I feel comfortable paying someone like that? And I know I have a number in my head, and that's the number that I put out there based on what I bring to the table. Okay, so I've always done that from day one. I treat people, my clients, the exact same way that I'd want to be treated when I'm paying for a service, and it works. As I said, I have a full roster. I'm incredibly grateful for that. So no plans to be posting before or after photos, unless, of course, a client tags me, and then I'll share it. Okay. But otherwise, it's not a marketing strategy that I've ever used and not one that I plan on using anytime soon. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Monday, December the 16th. As a reminder, if you have any questions related to your diet, your training program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking. Please feel free to email me those questions at nick@forevofitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at @fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel, my online coaching business, my in-house personal training business here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I truly do appreciate all the support and feedback that I get from everyone. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next week. Bye for now.